week 5 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few wide receivers. I have his sleeper options this week. The first guy, Robert Woods of the Houston Texans. So this Texan pass game's been pretty solid so far, with impressive rookie C.J. Stroud so far in the early going. And they got some weapons. Nico Collins, he's having a breakout year. Tank Dell in his rookie season so far has looked good for a few games. And then you got the veteran wide receiver, Robert Woods, who's still one of the better route runners in the league, I believe, even though he definitely lost a step or two with his injuries the previous year. So the last few games here for Woods: week 3, Jacksonville, 3 catches, 34 yards, 6 targets. And week 4 versus Pittsburgh, 3 catches, 26 yards on 6 targets. So right now, 12 targets the last 2 games. I know the first 2 weeks of the season, he had double-digit fantasy points in both games with Robert Woods with 19 targets. Obviously, Tank Dell is getting more of an expanded role, and Nico Collins just keeps getting open. But this week here at the Atlanta Falcons, in a potential mini shootout between these two teams, I think Robert Woods could be an under-the-radar type of fantasy player. And right now, he's available in 81% of fantasy leagues. This Atlanta team, they're very solid against the run. And like I said, if it's a ball game where it's just up and down the field, we could see some decent games from all the receivers on Houston in this one. So right now, Robert Woods, I have as a sleeper this week. Next sleeper is Braxton Berrios of the Miami Dolphins. So Braxton Berrios, last week he had a little bit of an expanded role for this Dolphin team lining up in the slot, and he had a good ball game at the Buffalo Bills. A carry, 11 yards, 6 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown, catching all 6 targets. So this week, a great matchup versus the New York Giants here. That one of the worst defensive teams in the league. And they got 2 young rookies in the secondary as well, where Berrios and this receiving core, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, really could take advantage. So Berrios right now available in tons of leagues at 92%. He's the number 3 wide receiver in 3 receiver sets. You know, Mike McDaniel like spreading the field out and getting a lot of speed on the field here with Tua to make quick throws. So right now, Braxton Berrios, we know they signed him as a speed guy, and last week it definitely paid off. So as a sleeper option versus a young secondary of the New York Giants, I think he's a guy that could carve out a decent ball game. And like I said, he's out there in 92% of leagues. And the final sleeper I have this week's Michael Gallup of the Dallas Cowboys. So Michael Gallup a few seasons ago had a pretty solid year, but last season he was coming off the ACL, he didn't do much. And even the first 2 games of the season, he was non-existent. But the last 2 games, he's gone out there and had double-digit fantasy games as Michael Gallup. Week 3 at Arizona, 6 catches, 92 yards, 7 targets. And week 4 versus the Pats, 5 catches, 60 yards. So right now, the last 2 games, he's getting peppered with targets. He had 13 targets. And this week here in a game where it's going to be tough for them to run, I think, at the San Francisco 49ers. This Cowboy team's going to have to throw the football a decent amount in this one. So right now, we thought Brandon Cooks, he would be a big addition to this Cowboy team, but it hasn't showed up in the box score, even though spreading out defenses and taking the top off, he's done that for sure. But in terms of putting up fantasy points and numbers, he hasn't in Cooks. But right now, Michael Gallup, the last 2 weeks, he's starting to get it going here. So right now, in a matchup where they're going to have to throw a decent amount, I think is Dallas. I think Gallup's a decent sleeper, and he's available in 79% of fantasy leagues. That's a few wide receivers. I have his sleepers here for week 5 of the fantasy football season.